Welcome, everybody. I'm Randy Miller, class of 93, excuse me. And I know that the three gentlemen to my left don't need an introduction, but I'm going to give a really brief one anyway. 25th President of Norwich University, Lieutenant General John Broadmeadow. Sir, good to see you.
Good to see you, Randy.
To his left, Brian Doyle from the mighty class of 94, our newly minted Vice President of Development and Alumni Relations.
Thank you, Randy.
And to his left, Brian Dunn, class of 13 and the current president of the Norwich University Alumni Association. Thank you guys for being here. And thank you for inviting me. I got a lot of feedback from the people out there watching over the last week or so. I did my best to incorporate what I could. I couldn't get to all of it, but what we're looking at is, for the next couple of minutes, is a discussion on all the hot topics that I think people want to hear about.
Great.
And sir, with your permission, I would like to start with the new guy for a question, if that's okay with you.
Before we do, just let me start that. Thank you for doing it.
My pleasure.
You know, you do a lot for the school, and I really do appreciate it. I want to start with something. I probably should end with it, but so I'm not a big coin guy. I should have had this out already. Rather than
This was not on the agenda.
This was not on the agenda. So this is not to avoid hard questions either. But I do. I'm not a coin guy, but you know what you do for the school, means an awful lot. Not just that you do a podcast for the school, but also because you do ask hard questions, and you do kind of keep us on our toes, and you give us the pace of the alumni. So I'm not going to save it till the end because I'll forget about it. But I did want to start with this.
Thank you very much.
Not the first one,
I
it's
appreciate
the
that,
third
sir.
one, so.
Thank you.
So, good. So,
I'll hold on to that.
all right.
Brian, you came on in September, I believe,
I did.
and we talked back then, and you told me that you had a successful career in the Army, a couple of years in corporate America, and that this was your dream job. So now we're at the end of your first semester here. I want to ask you, is this still your dream job?
100% it is, Randy. It's been great. And I just got off of a whirlwind tour. I did like 3 cities in 3 days. Started off in DC, went to Brooklyn, New York, and ended up in Charlotte, and just connecting and talking with our alumni out there. And if we haven't gotten to you yet, send me a note, because we will come where you are. We want to connect with everybody out there. And the energy is just palpable, and it's so positive and so exciting. People are energized by General Broadmeadow. I mean, it's truly unreal, and it just makes my job so much easier, because I know I'm connecting with people who have a passion for the school and want to help us get to a better place and to maintain that for generations to come. So absolutely, same answer.
Good, so no regrets.
No regrets.
Excellent. Good place to start.
But the biggest events are the ones that Karen comes to. So they're not there to see me. I think they're there to see her. And he just gave me the warning order tonight that he's putting together next year's travel schedule. And so he's prying me out of my office and out of Jackman Hall. So
Going to be on the road?
we'll be on the road a lot.
On the road more
So,
this year?
It's going to be the road show.
Good. Let's start off by celebrating a couple of students, if you don't mind. So the two of you, just a couple of days ago, were at the Charlotte Touchdown Club to celebrate Shane Letty, who was named the Defender of the Nation, I believe, is the name of the
Correct.
title.
Yep.
First Division III player ever to be so recognized. This was a really big deal.
It was
I
a
heard
huge
this was
event.
an event. Can you speak a little bit on that?
It was a huge event. I mean, it was, just from the choreographing of the thing. I mean, the videos. It is what you would expect from all these big Division I schools. I look at it as kind of the defensive player Heisman equivalent, right? And the overall one, the Bronco Nagurski Award, was the big award, and those all go to Division I players. But the Defender of the Year award goes to the player that demonstrates leadership beyond on the football field. And Shane clearly met that. His leadership, what he does on the field, you see it week in and week out, but also around the campus, just the way he presented himself, fabulous, clearly deserved this award.
His bio is impressive. Good grades.
Yep.
I think he's just got his branch. He's commissioning infantry officer, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. So it was a proud father moment.
Yeah, no, it was awesome, and you know, my favorite part, because they were primarily highlighting the four Division One athletes, and they would introduce them each, and they'd play a reel of their highlights. They gave Shane the same treatment.
Yep.
So one minute
Nice.
you're seeing, you know, the big house in Michigan, and the next minute you're seeing Sabine Field. It was really cool to see Norwich at that level.
It was.
Well, thanks to Shane for getting us there.
Yes.
Well, it was.
Yeah.
He really deserved it. But you said, proud dad moment. One of the nicest things about it was meeting his mom and dad, and
They must have been
oh
over the
my
moon.
gosh, it was just exuding pride, and they kept talking about Norwich. Here they're celebrating their son, and just kept talking about Norwich. It was great. I mean, it was exactly what you want to have. I think it's on ESPN
I think
this weekend, right?
Yes,
It's
sir.
coming out. We'll get that
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
But it was recorded, and it's going to be on ESPN, the whole ceremony. So, yeah.
Well worth time. They kept it
Yep.
moving. They kept it topical.
Yep. Yeah.
That's great. We'll pivot from him to Sophia Wrighthouse,
Yeah.
our regimental commander. I had her on the show a year ago. I was blown away, and I've had the opportunity to hear her speak a couple of times. And each time she speaks, I think, I'm glad I don't have to follow that. Unfortunately for you, sir,
I do. Yeah.
I've seen you follow her a couple of times now.
Yeah.
How is she doing? How's the core leadership doing in Rookdom this year?
So the Rooks just got recognized 2 weeks ago now, right? Yeah, we've been on the road a little bit, so it's blurry. But yeah, so I wrote Sophia a note, and I congratulated her, her staff, all the cadre on doing it. She is clearly exactly what you want to see in a regimental commander, right? And we've learned our lessons over the years to make sure we pick really good people to be cadet colonels.
No one like Randy anymore.
I'm trying to find a compliment there, but I don't think it was.
And no, but she really is. She, just as an example, she's standing duty in Jackman tonight. The cadet colonel is pulling her shift standing duty, just like any other officer, cadet officer in the Corps. That's leadership by example. I'm very proud of her. Yeah, the Corps looks great. The students across the board look really good. We had Netchi come up, the president from Netchi, our accreditation agency, and he wrote a blog afterwards, very nice. I don't know how you access it, to be honest, but he sent me a copy of it, and he said, in it, he wrote that it was really gratifying to see the cadets and their squaring and marching around the upper parade ground next to civilian students that are kicked back just like on any other campus. He really spoke to the diversity of the school, and he said, but there was something different about all about being a Norwich student, a Norwich cadet. So the Corps looks great, and Sophia's leadership is first rate.
The last time you spoke to the alumni, one of the things you talked about was numbers. Enrollment numbers were good, were solid.
Yeah.
We're at the end of the semester now. What does retention look like?
So, hoping, got to be honest, one of the things I'm learning, I wish I could tell you today we knew exactly who's coming back next semester, but we don't. And so we're going to have to look at that. Let me give a plug. If you want to go out, this is something we just put up last week. If you do a web search, an internet search for Norwich University Fact Book, and I'm hoping everybody online is out there doing this right now, you'll find an interactive display of our enrollment numbers going back 5 years, our retention numbers year to year, our graduation rates, and you can filter it all sorts of ways and however you want. So you'll see on there that for first year enrollment, we actually have been trending down, but we didn't trend down as much as we thought we were going to. We thought we beat our budget, So, and we weren't pessimistic. We bring in consultants and we look at it, and so while we knew we were going to take a dip, we didn't dip as bad. The better number was actually our retention number, and we actually pulled that slope up a little bit, and very happy with that. The results of that are we got better than anticipated net tuition revenue, which is one of the prime drivers of our budget. So we're going to end up doing pretty good this year as a result of that.
How is retention with Rookdom specifically? I know we had some programs like the
Yeah.
Start Ready,
Yeah.
which I heard you talk about today when you addressed the faculty and staff.
Yeah.
It sounded like that helped
Yeah.
people like get ready for,
Yeah.
for day one.
Yep.
But how were our numbers typically?
You know, I wish I had talked to Bill McCullough about this earlier. I want to say, don't quote me on the exact number, but it was around 32 that left the Corps of Cadets somewhere around Rook Week. Okay, that's when I stopped tracking it, to be honest. Some of them, more than half, went into the civilian side of the school, so we retained them as students. Fewer left the school for good, but I'm sorry, I didn't prep on those numbers, Randy. But so we did lose some, but I think less than what we were anticipating.
That number, and I'm not holding you to it, but that does sound like
Yeah.
that's a decent number.
Yeah.
You know, there's always going to be some in there. But what's the breakdown look like now, roughly, of Corps versus civilian students, the population?
Nice thing too, this fact book that you can find out there, you'll see the breakdown on there as well. We're a little better than 50-50 on the Corps side compared to the civilian side. That's nice. My preference is still to grow the Corps number so that we're 2/3 Corps, 1/3 civilian. Ideally 2,100 on-campus students. Okay, so 2/3 of those would be Corps students, 1/3 would be civilian, and then I'd like to add on top of that, some number of commuter students. So somewhere in the ballpark of 300 to 500. If we can get to 2,500, I mean that would be the ideal school right there. 2,100 on campus, another 400 or so commuter students. I think that'd make it for a nice on-campus population.
We're standing with 10 toes over the canyon of demographics, that
Yeah.
cliff that
Yep.
everybody's been known is coming for a long time, where we're all recruiting from the same student pool, and they're in different locations, and everybody's going after them. What does our recruiting model, our admissions model look like these days? Because it's a lot different from, I got some feedback from some grads, and we're used to, the old days. It's a much different model, I think, now.
Yeah. So a couple things on that, and so we're going to do a little bit of a stretch goal this year as we do the budget. Actually, I won't call it a stretch goal because I think our admissions folks have an even bigger stretch. So I've got numbers jumbled in my head. Are we at 625 for the incoming class next year? Is that the stretch goal and the goal in the budget? That's ambitious. Okay, it's optimistic. I'm really proud of our admissions team. Kim Riley came on board last year, kind of late in the season, has got this Start Ready program that I was talking about. It's a very personalized, reach out, connect with the students and get them to register for their classes early, but really commit. So we've gone to this, I think, want to say 625. You talked about the demographic, the cliff that we're facing, and it's real.
Yeah. And
So,
I think I don't want to jump in and put words in the general's mouth, but like we're crafting the strategy right now, and one of the really cool things that we're going to see when the vision comes forward is Norwich has a very unique niche in all of this, and the demographic problems that are affecting the rest of higher ed will affect us too. But we have something to hold on to, because what we do is unique and what we provide is unique. We're not just another liberal arts college in New England what's the key word for nestled in the hills? Right. That's not us. We do something more than that. And what you're going to see as we go forward with this messaging is we're going to lean heavily into what it is that we provide that makes us different from everybody else.
Yep.
And it's going to help us survive this demographic transition.
I met with the head of Marine Corps recruiting. People say, well, hey, the military's having a hard time. One of the very interesting things that the head of Marine Corps recruiting says was, we're finding that young people today, and maybe it's a shift over the last couple of years, they're actually responding to the Marine Corps' message of, hey, we'll see if you're good enough to join us.
This may not be for you.
I'm not ready to go there yet, with Norwich, but we do. We want a certain kind of student to come here, and we want you to join. And and we want you to be part of this, but we're going to ask a lot of you
You
if
gotta
you
be
come to the
scrappy.
school. You got to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that word. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brian Dunn. So over the years, I've talked to hundreds of grads, and I always ask them, how did you end up on the Hill? And I'm telling you, 50–60% of the time, there was some sort of alumni connection. Me too. It was one of my father's coworkers that took my father and I up here in '89 for homecoming weekend. And I heard the James gun go off, and I was in. You're head of the Alumni Association. We have a lot of clubs. We have a lot of passionate people out there. Where do alumni fit in with our recruiting?
I think the alumni fit in squarely in our recruiting model for that exact reason. Having an alumni in your life or a prospective student's life, being able to share their story, bring them up to the Hill, give them sort of tips and tricks on to how to survive, and also demonstrate the values in their own life that they learn here, they bring here, ensures that we're getting quality students.
Yeah, I like that.
I heard
Yeah.
from a few club members saying that they wanted to do more. In fact, a couple of them asked if we could float the idea of sending somebody from admissions to the clubs to talk to them during one of their events and give them, the information that they need, the facts. And then if they're not the point person for recruiting, I understand that, but at least they would know who to send prospective students to.
I like that idea, Randy, and I'll ask our admissions folks. I mean, they have got a cycle, right? And they're right. When they come back, they're in the middle of their busiest part of their cycle, so we will have to respect that. But I like this idea of them educating our alum to do what Brian's talking about. I will caution that sometimes, please don't, I remember back in, the 90s, we did this, and because it is a different school, and Billy McCullough's got a different, philosophy than that I just love, and he does it the right way. And, sometimes how the stories get among alum the further we get from the school, right? So sometimes that you got to be careful of that. So I do like the idea of admissions talking to our alum, but I really love the fact that our clubs are reaching out and saying, "Hey, what can we do?" That's
And that
fantastic.
would, to your point, that would be a good idea to send somebody there
Yeah.
to educate them on how you talk to a prospective student.
Yeah.
Here's some left and right limits. You want to stay
Absolutely.
within when you're doing it.
Absolutely. I mean, our biggest force multiplier is our alumni network.
Without a
I
doubt.
mean, we have such a strong alumni network. The affinity toward Norwich is crazy.
Yep.
Most schools would kill to have alumni like we have. So thank all of you listening. And we need to do all we can to equip that network to tell our story.
Well, and I know you're doing it. I mean, you're reaching out all the time, and
So one of the big things is this year we're looking at the club structure, seeing how we can change up the events, make sure it's not the same 2 or 3 events a year, and making them more accessible to families and even friends. So, you wouldn't necessarily, to a happy hour event, you wouldn't necessarily bring, a high school student. But you can have family events where if somebody says, hey, my nephew or my neighbor, they're looking at colleges, could we bring them along? And that's been pretty successful, and a lot of the club leadership is talking about doing more stuff like that.
that's great. That's great. And your leadership in that has been fantastic.
thank you.
Being an advocate for the clubs, and like you mentioned, bringing the club presidents in on some roundtables and stuff. I love that idea. So yeah.
The other thing you could do with clubs is incorporate students, bring the Hill to the clubs. A month or 2 ago, I had the opportunity to go out to dinner with Brian and Elizabeth Gurion, Professor Gurion,
Yep.
and Dave, who put together this amazing experiential learning for the students to go to Boston. Very Partridge. And they brought CJ students, nursing students, and cyber students. And they did a whirlwind 3 or 4 days in Boston where they went to the FBI headquarters, they went to Brick, they did just this amazing stuff. Alumni love that. I had more fun at that than I've had in a long time.
That's good.
And we're trying to build on that
Well,
because she's going to DC next, and we want
Oh, good.
to copy exactly what you're talking about.
But with the
That's
clubs too, it's when I used to work with the North Shore Club, we brought somebody in from the archives once to talk about rook book history, and she brought a bunch of rook books there. And we told people, bring your rook book if you still have it, and we gave an award for what's in the best condition and the worst condition. But even some of the groups on campus, somebody from the band or MCW, or take your pick. If you told a local club, come to the event, a couple of people from the drill team are gonna be there, I think that would be a draw.
Yeah.
Because one of the funnest parts about being a grad is when you get to talk to current students and you hear from them
Write that one down.
what's going on.
We've looked at different models and examples in the past where we have done that, because I think using the students now, giving them the experience of pitching in and helping on different club events is huge. So the alumni office has stood up a student organization called the Future Alumni Network. And these are students who are interested, they've all different walks of life, some are commissioning, some are not. They have an opportunity to engage with the board and engage with local groups and sort of be seed planters when they go back out and say, look, I didn't wait until I was an alumni to have my first club event. I went to these events as I was a student, starting with the freshman send-off. That's one of the most important events that we hold. And then we have networking events, and these students can engage on the back end of the planning of that. And then when they graduate, if they're going to some place where they don't know if there's a club, they're equipped to come back and ask the right questions around setting that up or collaborating with the club.
Yeah.
These engagements are really proving to be a determining factor in whether a student comes here or not. Now, Kim and her folks will tell you, coming to campus is the biggest thing. If they come here, if they visit the campus, they're probably going to come. If they go to a future leaders camp,
That's the big one.
they are really likely to come. But if they have an experience, a positive experience at a family-oriented alumni event where mom and dad are brought in as well, we show them the power of who we are, the power of our alumni network, and that's something that very few schools have.
Yeah.
So that's a great. That is probably the biggest thing that all of our alumni can do in terms of helping our recruiting. So.
Here's a throwback question. Remember when, probably not you, Brian, you're younger, but when we were looking at colleges, parents got that big book, U.S. News and World Report, where there were rankings in there. Do those rankings mean as much as they used to, or have they sort of lost some of their firepower?
Yeah, I'm new to this world. I will tell you, I probably get an advertisement a week for some different organization to say, "Hey, pay us this amount of money," and so there's a little bit of that. And I'm not saying that they're all like that. Some of them are probably legitimate. I don't know whether students and parents pay attention to that kind of stuff. I'm sure some do. I hear from some alum that they pay attention to that. But you got to understand, there's a lot more behind some of that than just
There are.
Right.
I'll give you an
numbers,
example.
so.
I've learned this from President Schneider way back when, where one of the things that they evaluate you on is your rejection rate. So schools will say, "Oh, well, we're going to encourage a whole bunch of people to apply," and they'll even send them things. "We'll waive your application fee. We'll give you a gift card if you apply," just so they can be rejected, so they have a higher rejection. So it can be gamed. I'm with you on that. I don't put much stake in many rankings these days, but
there are people that do, and I need to learn about it. That's one of the things. To be fair, I've got to learn more about it, and I will, and I'll take a lot of opinions on that. But right now, I don't know. So.
I gotta say that I go back to the uniqueness that is Norwich too.
Right.
It's hard to evaluate that. I mean, there aren't too many peers out there that you can grade us against.
Yeah.
And I think the more we tell our story, the more we stand out for our identity and what we are. It really doesn't matter what U.S. News and World Report says. I mean, we have something big.
We've got to be able to attract them. We like to say that we're the world's best kept secret, right? And not a lot of people know about it. I'll give a lot of props to our marketing communications office. Sarah Stefanik is doing a great job. I love the work that we're doing in terms of social media and all the rest. Yeah. The metrics, the pros, these marketing pros will tell us, hey, we're doing pretty good on the clicks and all the rest. And I'm listening to what they're saying, and I think the proof is out there. People are paying attention to the messaging that we're getting out. So that's helping get the message out there. So Sarah and her team are doing a great job, and really appreciate all the work that they're doing. So.
So are you officially an influencer then, sir?
No, no, who's not on social media.
Try to avoid that. Keep away from the keyboard, sir. You don't need to be doing this. Tuition, I think I have this right, about 68,000 a year with tuition and room and board?
Yeah, give or take.
Okay,
So,
roughly.
Yeah.
And there's significant markdown from the
Yep.
sticker price there.
Yep.
How much, is there an average amount that gets
Yeah,
marked down? What's the average
so
student pay?
our average, they call it discount rate, okay, for your average student. Now, there's a whole bunch of people off the average, right? But your average student gets a discount of about, we're in the 72% range.
Okay.
So, they're actually paying a quarter of the sticker price,
Mm-hmm.
for the school. Now, if you're an ROTC, the ROTC program is paying, full
Scholarship,
tuition.
for
Right, a
scholarship,
scholarship. Right, that's paying full tuition. So every single ROTC scholarship student we bring in brings us, 100% tuition and fees, which is great.
And solid students.
And solid students, that's right. Especially in the Navy program, where they're very STEM oriented. They want us to, and they push us towards STEM programs, which we love. That brings a certain caliber of student, and it goes again to Partridge's vision, engineering, and the rest. It's what this school is founded on. Again, we've got a broad curriculum. That's what we want. But these scholarships help us in a whole bunch of ways, financially, good students, and all the rest. Gives us some notoriety. So, yeah.
One of the things you mentioned today to the faculty and staff, you briefly mentioned sports, and you said, and I don't think we talk about it enough, and I have some sports stuff here, I agree with you. Academics are first and foremost at the university, right, but the importance of sports cannot be, discounted.
Yeah.
And good for recruiting,
Yep.
and it's good for the quality of life here, all those life lessons. We talked about Cadet Letty and his high point. We know the men's rugby team is going to the
Final
nationals.
Four, yeah.
Cross country did great. We've got some good teams. Some other teams have not thrived as much this past semester.
Yep.
What are we doing to try to up our game, pun intended,
Yeah.
across the board with Coach Hockenberry and Norwich Athletics?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I hear from alum a lot about athletics. I've mentioned it before. I mentioned it during homecoming. It surprised me how much I hear about athletics, and that's a good thing. Again, I'll go back. I don't want to keep talking about Partridge, but if you read about what Partridge said, athletics or being an athletic individual. I don't think they had college sports back then, but athletics.
He
and
was
the
a
idea,
power walker.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was. Yeah, exactly. We don't have power walking. Maybe we'll look at bringing an NCAA power walking team on. But no, we get. It's fundamental to who we are. Physicality, fitness. That's essential to this school.
Yeah.
It's all part of that well-rounded student that we want. We're in some ways a victim of our own success. Okay, so I'll look at hockey in particular. People learn, hey, Norwich gained a lot of notoriety out of a national championship hockey program, men's and women's. We got people stealing students from us now, stealing recruits from us, and they've learned. And a guy by the name of Dr. Docking, and I'm sorry, I forget which school it is, put a great book out about how athletics is vital to being able to recruit your school. A number of our alum have read that and talked to me about it. I love this book, but we've got mature sports programs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's hard to use that to invigorate new recruiting because we're very mature in it. I want to find a way to get back. And
Yeah.
you were talking today
And
about the program that Ed's talking about.
Right. Well, and I got to give props to our alumni too. They're not only giving us ideas, they're also giving us dollars, right? Which is prime thing that I'm concerned about. And they're-
Blue Line Club.
the Blue Line Club,
Right.
Touchdown Club, Captain's
Yeah,
Initiative,
rugby.
Scrum alums.
Yep.
Don't want to miss anybody. I
Yeah.
apologize, but they put their money where their mouth is, which is really helpful. And
Yep.
and the Captain's Initiative in particular is helping Coach Hockenberry tackle this problem, pun intended,
Yeah.
and get some help so we can benchmark ourselves against some other schools and see where there are some lessons that maybe we can learn.
And I like that, this idea of bringing together, and I appreciate the folks that are willing to fund this and look at this, because it's good to bring in an outside view and to tell us, hey, this is how you get better at this, because our coaches work really hard at this. They internalize it. I mean, they are passionate about it, and I can see when another school steals a recruit from them, it hurts because they invest themselves in these
soul
pieces.
into
They
it,
really
yeah.
do. I will say too, and I'm going to give huge props to our football coach, Bill Russell. We didn't have a great season this year, but I'll go back to talking about Shane Liddy and every other captain that's out on that team, and in fact every player, because I hear it. You sat in the president's booth with me the other day. You listen to the parents, you listen to the fans. Our players play every single minute of every single game. As hard as that must have been with the record, and I hear it not from the players, not from the coaches, but from the parents and from the alum and from the locals that are coming out and watching it. Now, you want to win. We're going to win. But I am also very proud of what our coaches, this attitude that we're not going to give up. We're going to try right until the last second of every single game. And I saw that out there, and I see it out there all the time. So we gotta make sure we back that up with getting the right students here that will make us competitive. We've got great facilities. We've got to fill those facilities with great teams. And
You mentioned Coach
that's a
Bill
priority.
Russell. I've talked to him in the past. I got to tell you, he's first and foremost bodying on Norwich and the Norwich philosophy of everything.
Yep.
And football comes, after that. But he's about one of the most passionate coaches that I think we've had.
Yep.
Yeah, and they keep their heads up. Brian, do you get the sense for the same passion for sports from the alumni that you interact with?
Absolutely. Folks are always talking about, if they're not local and they're not attending the game in person, they're streaming it.
Yep.
When I had the chance to go and watch football team and women's hockey at Salve Regina 2 or 3 weeks ago, parents were all enthusiasts. There were alumni in the crowd. It was incredible.
Yeah.
And it was folks who were, some from whom were local in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Others traveled a great distance to go and support the team.
Yep.
And people are getting ready for Houston. It's a big talk out there in the alumni networks right now because they're going to have games on Friday and
Men's
then on
rugby.
Sunday.
Yep.
Men's rugby. what did I say?
We've got a lot of successes out there too that I don't want to lose, right?
Yeah.
We were the GNAC Commissioners
Yep.
Cup winner for last year. And that's not a single sport, that's every sport. So when you add up all the points across all the sports in all the schools that are in the GNAC, we came out number one. We had the GNAC Player of the Year. On our swim team, we've got some real highlights out there. We've got some challenges too, but we're going to attack the challenges head on. I appreciate again the alum that are willing to help us figure out. We got a lot of competition out there now. How do we compete without playing on the ethical sidelines, right? I will not allow this school to break any NCAA rules. I want to make sure that people hear that loud and clear. We will not play on the ethical sidelines. We will be down the ethical midfield and following the rules for the NCAA. So.
Brian, you mentioned streaming before. I had a few people mention it would be nice to have sort of one-stop shopping sports package that grads and parents could, buy, pay for, where they would just get everything. But I'm actually going to pivot into the bigger picture with that is a Norwich super app, right? Now, this came up when I was on the alumni board about 10 years ago, and there's actually some work that had begun on it, on having an alumni app. We were talking earlier, VMI has one. It is very impressive. But imagine an app that maybe you pay a modest subscription fee for, but you have for people who want to opt into it, you have your directory in there. Gone are the days of printing that book and then they moved it to a CD-ROM, and that's just a dead business model.
Yeah.
But if you could get a directory in there, easy to find people. If you needed to hire a lawyer, a plumber, an engineer, you could go right there and look for a Norwich one first.
Yeah.
You could have geolocation in there that you could turn on and off if you didn't want to have it off. But imagine you're sitting at Fenway watching a game and you check, is any other Norwich grads here? Oh, there's 10 of us. Group message, 7th inning stretch, let's all have a beer together.
Wow.
Maybe
No,
you could
it's-
incorporate, I know this is, I'm talking about it like it's a small project. I know it's not. But
it
it's
gets-
doable. It's doable and schools are doing it.
It's on our radar. We're looking at what other, because we're all Norwich grads. Some of us go on to get second degrees from other schools, family from other schools. We were able to see other alumni networks and pick and choose the good ideas, try to implement them. So we're working on that right now, Brian, myself, and another committee member, and that's one of them.
Yeah.
Is having that kind of app, that kind of directory.
We're at a really great inflection point in terms of alumni relations. It reached kind of a low point last year, right? We kind of gutted the organization. I'm looking at Diane Scalero, who's the sole water carrier for a whole year, keeping alumni where it was. But that's not enough. As much of a superhero as Diane is, she can't do that all by herself. We've got staff back for her. We just hired a brand new person just this week. We were able to move some money around to put budget back there because she had no budget, right? So building these connections takes that money, and we're there now. We're gonna get after that. With the help of NUAA, we're reimagining what that whole department looks like and how we connect, because it's about the networking. If it's an app, if it's people going out to the clubs, there's a lot of different forms that takes, and we have to figure out the right recipe for Norwich. And NUAA is our dedicated partner and friend in this endeavor. And I'm excited to see what we're going to have by the end of the year, because we got the power, we get the ideas, we get the people, and we get the money now. So we can make this come together.
Just to revisit sports for 1 second, what's the general breakdown of our athletes' core versus traditional? I know some teams it's more than others, so it's
Yeah.
probably really hard to gauge.
It is. I wish. So let's get Ed Hockenberry on here one of these
Okay.
times, and he
Stand
can
by
do this.
on that one.
I
will get that for you.
But it is a conversation that I get from a lot of people, and it shows the diversity of our alumni. Okay, and I'll just give this anecdote. I've got some alum that have written to me and said, John, why is the hockey team almost all civilian students and no core students? Well, it's because our hockey team predominantly has junior hockey players that have played outside the school for a while. They're older, and when you're an older 23, 24-year-old, 26-year-old adult, you're not going to want to go through
With a
Rook.
singular focus on hockey.
Yeah, but they're not.
Academics.
Props to our guys, because we've got engineers, we've got across all majors, they tend to have a great GPA. And it is one of the things that Ed and his coaches really emphasize is again supporting Norwich's concept of the whole person. You're here for a lot more than just athletics.
It's difficult to balance those two. I didn't have a true appreciation for it when I was here. I didn't play any sports, but the guys who do that and pull that off are carrying on quite a bit.
Hey, try and be a nursing major in the core and playing a varsity sport.
Right.
I don't know how you do that. I'm so proud of all of these students that are balancing all this stuff. I talked about that today at the town hall here. Our students do so much more.
They're busy.
Incredible. I don't know how they do it. I really don't. I worry about it sometimes.
This spring, I think it's this spring, our chairman of the board, Alan DeForest,
Yep.
has been chairman for 15 years.
Yep.
And I think board time before that was probably 5 or 10. I mean, he's
Yeah.
over 20 years of service.
Yep.
Is going to be retiring.
Yep.
What are we looking at has the search begun for a proper replacement?
Yeah, I don't want to talk too much on the board and the things that they're doing, but it is a very important organization. Let me start with Alan, who is somebody who has dedicated 15 years as the chairman and more as a trustee, but has gone way beyond any of that. Okay, his knowledge of what goes on in this campus is unparalleled. because he puts the time in to really understand. He surprises me every time I talk to him about the things that he knows about what's going on in the details of this campus, and his passion for it is incredible. So we're going to lose a lot when Alan steps off the board in April. The search is underway. It's being headed by the Trustee Affairs Committee. They're solicited. They've put together a position description, if you will. And I got to tell you, if you're reading that and you think, it's a daunting position description to say we want you to volunteer to do all of this. It's a heavy lift. We're asking a lot of our next chair. But that search is underway. They're soliciting for nominations among the trustees, self-nominations or trustees nominating each other. They'll go through a series of interviews, and having done one as the vice chair, they're not easy interviews. These trustees are hard on themselves, right? And they ask tough questions, and they demand, good answers.
But the buck stops with them.
It sure does. It sure does. And so the intent is that come the board meeting at the end of January, beginning of February, the last thing that they'll do is vote on the new chair, then that person will have an opportunity to do a turnover between February and April, and at the end of the April meeting, as Alan steps off, the new chair will take over. So
Brian, how long is your term as president of NUAA?
2 years.
2 years. And then what does it look like when you guys have a new president?
We recently made a bylaw change where the presidents and the vice presidents all serve coterminous terms, so you have one administration that moves through. So I'll roll off into president emeritus status. The board will elect 2 new vice presidents and a new president.
Financials.
okay.
Is it true to say, just from what I've talked to people and been able to piece together, that we are on a better financial footing now than we were at the beginning of the year?
Yes, yeah. So I did a town hall for, you were there, I did a town hall for the faculty, staff, and students today, and I talked a little bit about the budget. The current year budget, I love to tell the story, when I got, elected to be the president, they did it while I was out of the room. I came back in, they didn't say anything to me, then they voted on the budget, and I was back in the room for the voting of the budget, and I'm like, okay, am I the president or not? And they voted it, and we voted a budget with a $600,000 deficit, so, and the first thing they did was turn to me and say, okay, Mr. President, oh, by the way, we did elect you the president, go fix the deficit. So this combination of we did a little bit better on our recruiting this year than what we budgeted for, and a better retention rate than what we had budgeted for really helped us out. We had an increase in net tuition revenue. If it holds through next semester, if the amount of students that we anticipate coming back actually come back, we're going to do pretty good. We've wiped out the $600,000 deficit. We're a little bit in the green right now. But as I like to say, and you heard me say it today, that's with this 7% draw out of the endowment. Okay, we want to be at 5%. We drew 7 this year, so we're still, even though we're in the green for what we budgeted, we want to get get down to that 5%. So we'd like to see more of that. The other thing, before I got here, they went through a lot of cut drills. I mean, we really did. We cut an awful lot, and we've held salaries stable for a few years now, and those things aren't good. Those aren't good long-term solutions. So we've got to figure out a way to grow this operating budget. We're seeing some growth in net tuition revenue, but we've got to get better at it. Financially, we're doing pretty good. We've got a good endowment that's
What's
allowing.
a ballpark?
Ballpark's up in the 270s,
Okay, so
270 million. Yeah, so we're doing good.
Touching 3.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. It's it's good. We'll
Well, that's where I'm going next. Yeah. So 270, 275 endowment, annual budget, approximately
about 100 million, just over 100 million.
Is it
so?
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, about 100 million. We're in the 90s, I think, this year. So because of the cuts that we made, so figure in the
I
90s,
asked
high
Alan
90s.
DeForest a year ago, I said, what number is the magic number that makes you sleep at night for the endowment? And he said 800.
Yeah.
So Brian Doyle.
Can I put you down, Randy?
Right, I left my checkbook in the car. What's the plan out there for fund? What does the fundraising model look like these days, and how are we going to get there?
So I think the most important part here is we're about to start a campaign, right? And don't want to get too far ahead of it, but you're going to see the campaign is focused on three things: the endowment, the endowment, and the endowment. And we're gonna really chisel away at getting to our goal like that. We're not gonna get 800 million in this, but maybe 100 million, sir. but it's where we need to be because it puts the school on sound financial ground.
It solves a lot of problems.
Yes, yes, it really does, and we can get there. So it doesn't really answer your question about what the model is right now because I'd say we're transforming that model and we're getting into campaign gear, which is a whole different attitude. We're not doing just the normal pace of events. It's not just reunion giving, annual fund, Norwich Day of Giving. We're going to synchronize that all to support the strategic vision that comes out through this campaign that we're going to announce.
So let me talk a little bit about the strategy, if I could, just for a little bit. And we're in the early stages of this, okay? But this is going to be a very compressed cycle to get this strategy done because I want it approved at the April board meeting so that when we go into our next year review in this summer, a 5-year review with our accreditors, we've got a strategy for the first time in a long time. I think
2011?
Since 2011. So it's been a while since we've had an approved strategy. In that regard, one of the things that's in there that I keep talking about, financial stability, I've added business modernization to that, right? So Norwich After Next, President Schneider's last strategy that was being developed, envisioned things that diversified our funding streams, okay? And it was a very big, grand, bold strategy that took us out a number of years. That's not where this strategy is going to be, okay? We've got a lot of headwinds facing higher ed writ large. So this is a short-term strategy, about 3 years. But Brian's bringing a lot of really good ideas in with him that I really, really like. It's leading me to say we can diversify our revenue streams, not just through fundraising, but through grants and special programs that are being done through our associate programs. Tara Kilcarney heads up the grants that the faculty and others do. Sharon Hamilton heads up our strategic partnerships, and she's bringing in business from DOD and others as well. Those things are good. Nuwari is doing a lot of good work, to help us. I'd love to see that expand and bring in some commercial business that helps us out. And these, I don't want these to be one-time shots, that all of a sudden we've got fundraising, which is critical. It has to be, it is the foundation for how this school is going to survive. But if we get net tuition revenue and we get grants coming in, if we get DOD contracts through Nuwari and through Sharon, there's a lot that can be done, to all of a sudden help us financially, give us a revenue focus that makes less demand on the endowment. But growing the endowment, so that growing that pie, so that 5% piece gets bigger and bigger. My focus is really turning, this is a complicated business, and anybody says it's easy or it's a business, it's not, okay? This is academia, and it is incredibly complicated. But my goal right now is to really look at what we call unfunded discount. It's a line in our net tuition revenue piece, and we're up in the 60 millions in that, and that's coupon. We give it away for free, and I want to reduce that number. You do that by growing the endowment. And that's where we want.
So alumni are going to play a big role in this, as we do in everything else. There's some challenges there. We were talking a little bit earlier today, Brian, is that there's generational shifts going on here. As the guys from the 50s, 60s, 70s are no longer around as much as they used to be. And we've got a chunk of folks from the 80s and the 90s where the three of us come from, and that's a pretty scrappy group. We have, we've got some lost sheep, which I want you to touch on in a second, of how we're trying to get our lost sheep back engaged.
Yeah.
But there's also a bit of, I don't want to say mending of the fences or airing of grievances, but there needs to be some sort of engagement with some people who feel as if they've been
Yeah.
sort of left out for a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, we got to commit to engaging with our alumni. There's not a call that comes in or a letter that comes in that we don't have an obligation to answer. I mean, we owe that to our base. The passion is great, and if we can connect with, you know, whoever it is with whatever grievance they might hold, I'll listen. You know, we need to do that, and that's the only way we can move forward together, is if everyone feels valued and their opinion is valued. We may not do everything that comes in, because we can't. I mean, it's physical impossibility, but there are good kernels of ideas in there that we can pull out.
Sometimes I think people just want to be heard.
Yeah.
Like truly heard, though. Listen to them. They need to get some things out.
Yeah.
So I think that's a step in the right direction. How do you propose reaching out to our lost sheep, the folks who graduated and just aren't engaged for whatever reason?
So finding out why they're not engaged is going to be key to that. We have 4 or 5 classes that went through the brunt of COVID, and these are alumni who didn't have a commencement or commissioning ceremony. They didn't have junior ring. They didn't have Reggie Ball. They didn't have a traditional college experience. They had a COVID college experience. Taking, you know, leaders from those classes and bringing them, because they're all out in the workforce now, and making sure that we can respond to, you know, what their experience was is going to be key. So inviting them out to club events, making sure that they're aware of club events where they can talk to people, recognizing that not everyone at that event is going to have the experience that they had, but making sure that they still feel welcomed.
I want to build on that just for a second, because he brought up something really cool, and I'm going to get out ahead of our announcements. But that COVID generation, that happens to be the 0s and 5s, right? And that is the homecoming that's coming up this year. We were able to book that same DJ that we had for the Women Kicking Glass Gala, who was superb. We're going to have them back on that Friday night. I haven't told the boss any of this yet, so I hope he's not going to kill me for this, but we're going to celebrate those classes at homecoming. So it's still in development phases, but we're thinking some recognition of graduation for those who never graduated in front of everybody.
Right.
Some recognition of that old guard class that didn't get to walk on Sabine Field and get their medals. I'm not going to embarrass myself by doing the public math to tell you which class that is, but
Right.
they know who they are, you know, and just, you know, really build into that so that it shows the resiliency of the Norwich alumni community and how we're there to support each other and how we're there to celebrate one another.
Yeah, no, that's great. And we'll hold to, Mark Anarumo had the promise of you can come back for graduation and walk at graduation. I like the idea of extending that to Old Guard and making sure that we honor those Old Guard members as well. That's fantastic. So we're going to hold to that. I mean, that's a great thing, and that's a great idea, and we will honor that. So those COVID classes are not going to get lost. So we will focus on them. And I appreciate Brian and Brian. And, I got to make sure I call the right one.
Brian Doyle, one more on fundraising. I had a number of people ask about donation verification.
Sure.
So somebody sends a check in for a specific cause.
Yep.
How do they go about confirming that didn't get lost in the shuffle and indeed went wherever
Right.
they earmarked it for?
No, we need to build in a strong sense of transparency. It goes to our core values, and ensure that money gets where it needs to go. And a lot of that is incumbent on me. We've been focusing on instilling policies and processes and doing the flow chart. When you get a donation in, it goes to this person who books it, this person who charts it, this person who acknowledges it and gets back with the donor to tell them that they got it. We need to do that, and we are cleaning up our shop to make sure that we can.
Yeah, that acknowledgement is very important. Particularly important to me because Karen, my wife, runs the Partridge Society. She's the chair of the Partridge Society, and I got to tell you, when I miss a thank you note, I hear about it. So nothing. Seriously, nothing hurts me more than if an alum or anybody has donated to our school, has invested in our school, and we don't appropriately thank them. That's wrong. And I genuinely appreciate Brian's commitment to making sure. And I think stewardship is hard, and acknowledging that it's a very, very hard thing. Brian has recommitted, has promised to recommit to that, and I do appreciate that very much. We are thankful for everybody that does things. So, yeah.
We spoke about a year ago, and one of the things that we were talking about was Northfield development as well. That the school works in tandem with the town. If
Yep.
we're going to grow and prosper, the town has to prosper as well.
Right.
There's been a number of projects you're aware of that some of our graduates have done. They've started the Northfield Village Development Project,
Yep.
Hugh McLaughlin and
Yep.
Mike
Mike
Babiak.
Babiak.
And not just talking about it, but done it.
They put money, they've got money on the barrelhead.
70 Depot,
Yep.
and there's 6 or 7 apartments upstairs, and a brand new restaurant for Northfield opening this week, Filoni's. Then on North Main Street, they're putting in, it's about a $6 million, 35 units, 25,000 square feet, housing. This will help the school recruiting as well, because as you know, housing
Yeah.
is very difficult. We try to get faculty and stuff up here. Is there anything in the works, or what's the relationship with the town
Yeah.
as far as growing together?
Yeah, no, Randy, that's a great question. And Northfield is critical to Norwich, and I like to believe Norwich is critical to Northfield. But it does extend beyond that into the whole central Vermont
Sure.
area. So a couple things. One, we've solidified what we call gift in lieu of taxes, right? There was always this question, are we gonna make a donation to Northfield, a gift to Northfield? Because we don't pay, we're a nonprofit organization, technically we don't pay taxes. Legally, they can, yeah, we could, but it's a no-brainer. Of course we're gonna pay. They provide us fire and emergency services, all of the things that help this school out. And to be a part of this community, we're going to do that. So we've made a payment to Northfield last year. We're going to do it again this year. And I intend working with the city to solidify this, that it's just part of what we do. We're not going to question that anymore. We owe, and so that's the financial side of it. Housing and what our alum are doing, what Hugh and Mike and others are doing is fantastic, because they are showing that Norwich, its alumni, are vested in this community, and they're going to help it grow. That has repercussions, because Vermont's hurting right now in housing, in investment, and the rest. I've spent a lot of time talking with the state leadership at the national, congressional level, at the state level with the governor and others, at the local level with all the elected representatives here. And I want them to know that Norwich is behind this community, and we're putting our time, our money against where it's at.
Long-term investments too. And just for folks who are watching, Northfield Village Development is a fund where others can join it. If you just Google Northfield Village Development, it's the first thing that comes up. And they just 2 days ago put another piece of property under agreement on a freight yard way.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. You gonna
Yeah.
say something?
No, that's awesome.
This is an important one. The past year, across the country, we've seen speech and protests taken to a different level at a lot of universities, some of our Ivy League universities, and it's hard to watch. And Norwich has always been a place of spirited debate, disagreements. It's part of our learning process. It's in the mission statement from the 1840s. Listen to all opinions, and you're free to argue with them. I know I didn't say that perfectly, but it's part of who we are.
There'll be comments.
Yeah.
Yeah, there will be.
Yeah.
It's part of who we are. And I can remember some professors who I completely disagreed with, but a couple of years after I graduated, I was really glad that I got that perspective,
Yeah.
because I was prepared for it when I went out there in the world. But there's a thin line of free speech and spirited debate that can be infected by extremism. And we've seen that across the country. What do we do here to make sure that that kind of stuff doesn't happen? Harder for the alumni group, right? But the campus is our learning laboratory.
It is.
How do we look at that here?
I give huge props to Bill McCullough and his staff in the Commandant's office and the Dean of Students, Greg McGrath, and his folks working with both the Corps and the civilian students. in a lot of ways to understand them, involved and engaged leadership. In some ways, we have it a little bit easier. We're a military school, right? And it's very obvious when you're in the Corps Cadets that we teach honor and respect for the chain of command. You don't protest the chain of command. That's called mutiny
That's
in the
not a
military,
thing,
right?
right?
Right? Yeah, so we don't do that. But our civilian students hold themselves to that as well. And that's not to say that they don't hold deep opinions and strong opinions. We all did. I mean, we've talked about how we've argued and had discussions, and we all have, going all the way back. And I'm sure it happened. I know it happens today. I kept talking about the Military Writers Symposium at the town hall today. These students speak their mind, and they know what they know where they want to stand, but they're also willing to listen and learn. I'm not just saying that. It is in our mission statement to tolerate all opinions when reason is left free to combat them. And they do take that on. And they understand that, I think they understand, at least from what I've seen, you don't have to have a rancorous protest in order to get your purpose out. I see it every day on this campus.
This school was founded as a protest, right? I mean, Alden Partridge didn't like the way the educational system was working in the country at the time, and he went out and he founded his own school as a result. And we're rooted in it. There's no getting around it.
I'm going to give props to our faculty as well. And I know, there's a lot out there that want to kind of buy into that narrative that's out there that the faculty on campus. Now, you know what? We just went through a great discussion on academic freedom. And there was a proposal that came up. There were two very different views on what academic freedom meant. And there was rancorous debate that went on here. It wasn't something that everybody just said, "Oh, let's change this word or that word." No, there was real debate that went on, and you know what? In the end, they voted. We put a good statement into the faculty manual that supported a view of academic freedom that fits the model of this school, and it works, and it's a wonderful thing. Our faculty do it. They were a great demonstrative model for our students. And it wasn't easy, and not everybody necessarily agreed with it, but we got it done, and it's good. And I'm happy, and that's who the school is. You ask why? I don't know, Randy. I think it's just what Norwich is. I really mean that. It's just something when you walk around here. You don't have to be in the Corps of Cadets. You could be a civilian student or a member of the faculty. It's just, I don't know what it is. And I wish I knew, because, I want to make sure we keep doing whatever it is.
Secret sauce.
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly,
Let's move towards wrapping up, but I have a fun question for each of you before we leave. I chose this room as the location because it's one of my favorite rooms on campus. I can remember doing guard duty as a cadet and just coming in here and just going around the room and reading. We'll go to you, Brian Doyle, first. Do you have a favorite hero in this gallery?
Other than you, Randy?
Yes. Besides me.
I mean, as a tanker, I'd have a hard time not saying Captain Burt. When I was a cadet here, he was still around. He'd come by campus on occasion, and it really captivated me. His story.
You actually got to meet him. That's that's the
Yeah.
big thing there. Yeah. Brian?
Private Willie Johnson. I think he was 11 years old when he got the Medal of Honor, Civil War, and just always fascinated by his story.
The first initiated member of Theta Chi, wasn't he?
Wow.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chasen Freeman chose him to be the first initiate. Sir, do you have a favorite in here?
I know you're going to think I'm going to pick the Marine, and
I do think you're gonna pick the Marine.
I probably hinted toward that, but I'm going to refuse to say it,
Okay.
Because I sat in here and I read that, right? And y'all can't see it on the camera, but no person was ever honored for what he received. Honor has been the reward for what he gave. That was said by Calvin Coolidge. Our school is deep in its history. We're proud of it, immensely proud of it. There's no other thing to be more proud of than somebody that has gone above and beyond like every one of these members did here. It's humbling to be in this room.
It is.
It's humbling to look at the medals that we have here, to read these citations. I can't pick one out. There's no way I can pick one of these people out and say, this one's my favorite. I honor them all, because whether you're our newest grads or you know, our oldest Civil War grads, you know, these men, and they're all men. I like to say, I hope we don't get any more of them because of what we have to do, but the fact of life is we're going to have others, and we'll have women in here eventually too, but you know, I can't pick one, no.
Fair enough. Let's say a quick thank you to Dan, Dane, Mark Cole, and Diane Scalaro for putting this together for us. Logistically, we threw them a couple of curveballs, and they delivered above and beyond. So thank you very much for supporting us with this. Gentlemen, thank you for having me here. I enjoyed this, and I hope we do it again sometime.
Thank you, Randy.
Thanks, Randy. Thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure.
So, Brian, nice to see you here. So,
Anybody hungry?
Counselor.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
Thank you.